Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today on the show, we've got our great friend, Brandon Betz. How you doing today, Brandon?
Hey, Jerry. I'm doing so wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, it's nice to see you. It's nice to be talking to you and catching up. We've talked on the phone a couple times, I think, in the last couple months, but I haven't seen you in a while. And what'd you call that? Your COVID beard?
My COVID beard. Yeah, exactly. My hair, too. It's getting really long in the back. Here, look at this.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
noticed that.
it's like I'm not going into work. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not going to fundraisers. I'm not doing any of that shit. So, growing out the beard, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you some pictures of me with a beard on, and I think I'm actually motivated to just post them on social media, so
Good.
you can see how strange I look with a beard. I mean, I just can't do it. So, all right, so we got a lot to talk about. You've got your hands in a lot of things. I think I'm going to turn this over to you with the question of, would you please tell us about yourself and some of these things you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first thing that I like to tell people is where I'm from. Obviously, I'm not from the state. I'm not from Lansing. I was born and raised in Anchorage, or not Anchorage, Alaska, but Alaska generally speaking. I was born in Fairbanks, grew up in small town of Valdez with 4,000 people, and went to high school in Anchorage. I was up there for about 20 years, moved down to the States, went to school, and ended up in Lansing, Michigan, of all places, which has been fantastic. I am a city council person for Lansing, your ward on your side of town, the east side. I've been doing that for about a year. I'm now into my second year of that. Feels like three, obviously, because the race was the year before that. So it's just been a whirlwind. And then on top of that, my day job, I am a tax policy analyst for the Michigan League for Public Policy. I am a classically trained tax economist. Got my master's degree in that and been doing that for a really long time. So, taxing rich people, making sure that Jeff Bezos pays his fair share, all that sort of stuff is just right up my alley. And I love it to death. So
He got dethroned yesterday. Elon Musk
yeah.
took over, right?
Yeah, I saw that. As whatever. They both need less money, and we need to put it into the Fledge.
Well, we need to put it into the economy, and we need to get it into the hands of people so we can start using it and all of that. That's for damn sure. So you raised a ton of questions for me in that brief, first introduction there. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college?
I went to I was raised Mormon, believe it or not. Interesting enough, I'm no longer religiously affiliated with anything. In fact, I have a huge tattoo of a snake on my arm now for that reason. But so I went to Brigham Young University for my undergrad in Brigham Young University, Idaho. I studied financial economics, and then I decided to go more the traditional route and study math and all of that. So I almost have a minor in math, but I didn't want to take differential equations, and so I didn't do my minor because it's a class that is useless to me. So and then I went to grad school at Syracuse University. It's ranked about 50 in the country. I was enrolled in a PhD program there. I wanted to get my PhD. It was one of those things that I was just dreaming of, and one thing that I decided to set my life out in. And then I got into the program and I realized, and this is going to be funny to you, that all academia is politics. And I didn't like that. It's like you write these papers, but you have to get letters of recommendation from all these people to get tenure. And then once you have tenure, you're free and all that stuff. And it's just this huge grind that I didn't want to get into. So I decided to graduate with my master's degree, moved to Michigan, or got a job out in Michigan. And now I'm here. I mean, I'm so glad that I studied economics, though. It's fascinating. It's mathematical, and it's a wonderful way to look at the world, and it's an interesting way to look at the world, I think. And especially in modern times when you're looking at, the effects of COVID on the economy, looking at unemployment rates, looking at, where people are spending their stimulus checks and how this all interplays with businesses being opened and closed. And all of that stuff has just been so fascinating to watch over the last year.
So, first of all, the Mormons are right, according to South Park, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just the funniest thing. We're going to die someday and somebody's going to be right. And, for me, I'm just hoping that I'm in the ground. The mushrooms eat me up. I'm going to die and bury myself in a mushroom suit so that the mushrooms can take over and like create an ecosystem and all that. Because, mushrooms are the coolest thing on the planet. Anyway, but maybe I'll wake up and I'll be at the feet of God and it'll be like, why didn't you believe everything that I told you? And I'll be like, damn it. Sorry, please don't send me to hell. I believe you now. I've seen you.
That's Pascal's wager, a famous mathematician. His wager was bet on God, because if you're wrong, it doesn't matter, right? If you're right, you're
I'm doing the opposite.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a coward's way out to take Pascal's wager. So I want to go down a couple routes. I want to explore the word economy and economics, and I want to explore socialism. You okay with both of those things?
I am okay with all of those things.
All right. So I got my book here. Rutger Bregman. You know this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Utopia for Realists. I'm reading this book, and man, it is fascinating. Have you read it?
I have not.
I'd love to give you this copy after I'm finished with it. But he, taxing the rich. Let's just jump right in there, because that'll help us lead into socialism anyway.
Oh, this is an easy discussion. So rich people take their money and they put it into financial vehicles that don't actually make the economy operate, right? They put their money into stocks, which are bonds or things like that are important, and they operate within the economy. But the problem is that to make an economy grow, you have to have an increase in personal spending. People have to spend money. And when a vast majority of society doesn't have, wealth, doesn't have money. I mean, there's data out there that shows, the average American has $63,000 or $64,000 in wealth, meaning their home, their car, their cash savings, their retirement, and all that stuff. But then you look at, there's a racial disparity in that. You look at Black people. On average, they only have $18,000 in wealth on average. And when we look at these disparities and all of that, what we've seen is that these rich people just keep getting richer, and they keep sucking money from the economy, and they don't spend in the economy. And then we're stuck with a whole bunch of rich people and a whole bunch of poor people who don't have any work to do because that money's not being spent in the economy. So the best way and the most equitable way that we can do anything, I have a belief in what our federal government should be doing. There's one major thing that our federal government should be doing, and that is taxing rich people as much as we can and just redistribute that wealth to everybody as a cash payment.
Yes.
Along the lines of a UBI, it doesn't have to be a UBI necessarily. A lot of people have fights about whether or not UBIs are a thing, but direct cash payments are the best way to make the economy itself operate correctly. That redistribution of wealth, when I studied in grad school, I used to be a capitalist. I used to believe that, there's these market efficiencies and all of that. Then my last lesson of grad school, I remember it to this day, the second theorem of welfare economics, it's called, basically says that you can redistribute wealth and still have an efficient outcome, right? It just when you redistribute wealth, all of a sudden, the economy changes, prices change, people get different things and all that, and then it can be more equitable. And so for me, taxation is a tool that we can use to build a more equitable system. because underlying all of our problems, everything that's going on is cash. When you talk about food insecurity, when you talk about bad schools, when you talk about the economic problems that rural America is facing, even when you talk about all of these different things, an influx of cash is what we need, and that's what government does, right? Government just pushes money around to different programs. So that's my theory.
Do you know who the last president who almost implemented UBI was?
No.
It was Nixon.
Oh.
Nixon was very, very close to doing it in the 70s. And the Democrats asked for, they said it wasn't enough. They need to get more. And that started to kill it. And then somebody handed them a study from, I think it was 1700s, that showed that there was a negative impact by giving the people money. They didn't work as much, but the data was completely false. The people that filled out the surveys were the lords and the landowners.
But check this problem out. This is my favorite thing. Capitalism. People don't work as much when you give them cash. Who the fuck cares? I want you to do things. I want you to create art. I want you to spend your time inventing new things. I want you to hug your cat. I want you to play video games. I want you to go swimming. I want you to be healthy. I don't want you to work all day. Nobody wants to work all day, and I don't want to work all day. So, to me, there's this theory of degrowth, which basically talks about how we as a capitalist economy are pushing human capital way too far. We're expecting way too much, and there's this burnout that's happening in society. Yeah. People are just being burnt out because you're fighting for that paycheck. You're fighting to make sure that you have a house, to make sure that you have food. And I don't want people to fight for that. I want people to work because they want to make society better. I want people to work because it's something to do. I want people to work because, they just damn well feel like it. And that means necessarily that we're going to be less comfortable, right? To some degree, if there is less stuff being produced, if Amazon is shipping less stuff to your house, then you're not going to have as many fun things. Maybe you won't have that TV anymore. You won't have that new PlayStation or something like that because the economy is just different now. But that's good, because what you need is leisure. You need to be able to go on those walks and spend the time and meet your family and make sure that you can go on that vacation and take care of your kids when they're bored, right? Like, there's so many things that we as human beings are that aren't workers.
Yeah. So that, I love everything you're saying. This book, you might not even need to read it, because I'm reading about the 15-hour work week right now, and how people could share jobs and we could get rid of unemployment that way. But also, you really hit on consumerism is wrecking everything. In my opinion, it is that overbuying that, just wiping out small businesses from Amazon, or wanting an iPhone because they changed the back of the color to red or whatever. It's crazy, and people need to be investing in their leisure.
Yeah, and for me, I love buying things. There's nothing truer about me than loving to take that paycheck and just burn it right away. I just, buy guns and everything else. I love spending money, but I think that the problem is that with consumerism comes advertisement, and what we're being bombarded with all of the time are these messages that you need to look a certain way, you need to buy the next best thing, you need to do all of these things that is actually manipulating our minds into doing things that we otherwise wouldn't do. So, it's like, I guess my example is something that I thought about a lot. I'd love to work a job for $200,000 a year and live in a really nice house and all of that stuff. But when I sit down and think about it, it's like I would be working so hard, to make that much money. You've got to give your life away. You've got to give your relationships away. You've got to give all these things away so that you can do this job to make this money. And it's like, that's a problem. And so consumerism is, it's not healthy. And it's just part of capitalism, because businesses are profit motive. Their job is to make a profit. And they're going to manipulate you in every single way that they can to make sure that you give them another dollar. And that's just a product of capitalism.
Yeah. Let's swing back into economics. We got into socialism there a lot, which I love, and I want to keep going on these two combinations together.
They're one and the same.
Yeah. Corporations, greed, maximizing profit, paying $9 an hour to somebody that isn't even a living wage, that has to be supplemented with all kinds of welfare programs, and things like that. What if we gave, the hypothesis I share, I think probably with you and probably with Rutger Bregman, is that, if we gave somebody $2,000 a month, one of the first problems we'll have is they're going to quit that bullshit job, right? And if maybe they're a high school dropout, they might get their GED. They might take some free classes at LCC. They might have a better job in 2 months, and they might not be putting up with all the BS that corporate America does to them. What do you think about? Is that a thought you share too?
That's part of it, but I think that there is one thing, economically speaking, I want to bring this up. It's going to be kind of a sidestep to your answer, so I apologize.
No, it's okay.
There's one thing that would destroy capitalism, but still allow for society to function, economically speaking, and that is worker ownership. Right? The problem right now is that I work for a boss. Well, I work in a nonprofit, but if I work for a corporation, I'm working for a boss, I'm working for a shareholder, and the decisions that I'm making and the work that I do and the product that I create, I don't get the full value of that product. My boss gets the full value of that product, right? I get, for example, you go flip burgers at McDonald's. If I were to go do that right now, I would make $9.25 an hour. I bet you I'm bringing in $100 an hour for that store. With overhead, the profit margin on a burger is what, 10%? I don't know what the market looks like there. And that 10%, instead of going into my pocket because I did that work, it goes to the capitalist pocket. It goes to that person who bought the machinery in the first place. Yet labor, economically, again, labor is 2/3 of the production process. This has been shown time and time and time again in nations across the world. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. 2 labor to 1 worker is like the optimal way to form society, or that's how we run the capitalist system. And for me, I would rather work to own that capital. And the way that we do that, we go back to this whole redistribution of wealth, right? We take all these rich people, we take their money, we put it in the pocket of individuals, and now I, as the burger flipper, buy my McDonald's. And I and all my friends buy the McDonald's, and now we own the McDonald's, and now we get the profit of our labor. And that is what will make the economy operate, generally speaking.
Yeah. So let's can we talk about like GDP for a second?
We could talk about anything you want. I love this.
What are your thoughts on GDP as a measure, or even like stock market as a measure, or full employment as a measure of how good the economy is doing?
That's a good question. Personally, I never look at the stock market. It's, there's some economic facts that you can pull out of the stock market. The direction that it's heading. Basically, what the stock market is it is the most efficient way to get information across. It's the most efficient. Money gives information, right? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Money is information. Where money is going is information. And when somebody has information, they make a trade in the stock market, or they think that they have information, and then they make a trade, and then that information is transmitted to everybody else, and then everybody makes decisions. So when the stock market crashes during a recession, that's because a whole bunch of people got information that the stock market, that the economy was going to take. Right? Or they had it in their minds, or they had a thought. So it's good. I watch it. It's interesting. And also, my retirement's tied up in the stock market. So I'm interested in what it's doing because, of course, I'm never going to retire. I'm a millennial. None of us millennials are ever going to retire. Anyway.
Well, us Gen Xers thought that too.
Yeah, then you got a little bit. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I do look at employment a lot. I think that one of the most important things to me to make sure is that we have a workforce that is operational. But I don't really care necessarily how the economy is doing today. I care about how the economy is doing 10, 15, 20 years from now. I care about the future because right now, the economy, when we talk about this thing, it is something that no one person will ever understand. We as economists sit down and we measure different parts of it. We make predictions. There's theories about what happens. We watch it. We kind of see how money flows and what people buy and stuff like that. But nobody really knows what's going on with it. We know that there's business cycles. We know how those business cycles work. But, to me, it's about what makes an economy resilient. And there are things that do that. We know that a well-trained workforce is one of the most important things for personal income, for spending, for consumption, for business attraction, for all of those things. So when I look at our country, when I look at our state, I say, how well is our education system operating? How well is our K-12 system operating? Because that is, we underfund our education system, which means 10, 15 years from now, we're going to have a less skilled workforce. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We need to be figuring out how to build an equitable education system so that everybody can learn to thrive and do the things that they want to do with their lives, right? Yeah. It's not like I want you to get an education and go be a doctor. It's that I want you to get an education and do something that's valuable, that you enjoy, that brings you joy, and also allows you to live a comfortable life.
Yeah. My guest yesterday was an 11th grader from DeWitt, and I'm not asking you the big question yet, but she showed me a piece of art that said "School kills artists," and we got talking about that subject. I just want to point that out for a second because the education system needs a lot more than just funding, too. I mean, we need a new model for educating people because I'm super tired of, hey, you're going to be a magnet for the insurance company and we're going to make a bunch of workers for you,
Well, the thing that I love is project-based learning. There's so many specialized schools out there that are doing these, I was hearing about this years ago. I haven't seen it, but here's a project over the entire year. You're going to be working on this thing and learning math and learning science and learning writing and learning all these things while building something and building your entrepreneurial abilities and things like that. It's got to be different. And then also we need to realize that humans aren't all the same. We don't all learn the same way. And there's got to be a way that we can teach people in the way that they're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. Another thing that is actually really interesting that I used to not think about, but a podcast pointed out to me one time, was childcare being the backbone of the economy. There are so many women throughout the economy, so many who end up having to stay home and watch their kids because childcare is too expensive. It's not quality enough to teach their children, and it's not, and it's just vastly underfunded. And this person, it was a Black woman. I'm sorry that I forgot her name, but she said, imagine the economic activity that would happen if every child was enrolled in childcare and was getting education, not only from their parents, but from the people around them, right? I believe in communal childbearing. I don't believe that one parent or two parents can raise a child that is well-rounded enough, because you need society. And we have only been in nuclear families for the last 100, 200 years, right? Before that, every child is running around, going over to other people's houses and getting to know those families and all of that stuff. And just having this, doing things a little bit differently, and doing childcare that way frees up an entire workforce that wasn't there before. Yeah. Frees up a whole bunch of people to work, to have free time, to do all those things that make us fulfilled as human beings. And I think that, I don't know, that's just, sorry, I know you told me I could talk about anything, and this is just something that's been on my mind. So, well,
I know you're setting up for a shout out to the village and Michael and Erica Lynn too. So shout out to them. Sure. Because it does take a village, despite it being a cliche now, because of her book and whatnot. What Michael and Erica are doing are, trying to get there too. And, the other thing I want to just throw in there, a 15-hour work week would let the parents also be involved in that process. I mean, I can't think of a better way to add value to my life than to spend more time with my kids. And, I bet you I've fallen into this trap where I'm buying something to try to get them to spend more time with me. And if we just started with that, it might have been a lot better.
Yep.
So we're 27 minutes in, and usually around 20 minutes, I ask you about, your mission and all that. Can we keep talking for a little bit more?
Whatever works for you.
Okay. So we're going to run a little long, if that's all right with everyone. So yeah, Dustin just said, wouldn't we just want parents to take care of their own kids with their leisure time? And I think there is some merit to that. My response would be, but the diversity you could get from the group would really be great. So, and Kiana, who is a great friend of the Fledge, said, I love how much you two are enjoying your conversation. I can tell you both can do this all day. So that's kind of where
Jerry and I are friends. We hang out. I love seeing him.
Yeah, we used to hang out a lot more.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, a lot more. Yeah. So, you want to talk about city council a little bit? I don't really care if we do cover that or not.
I mean, if the people here are interested in it, there's always stuff to talk about. I mean, there's a lot that went on last year. There's a lot that we're looking at coming in the next year. I know that I've got some priorities that I'm going to be working on. And, I also, whenever I have conversations like this, it's not always like, there's all these things that I can list off that I'm doing, but I like to have more philosophical conversations about what it means to be in office and what it means to me and what I expect from my constituency, right? And I think that that's a conversation that we could have if you wanted to.
Yeah, let's spend a little time on that. I don't necessarily, I mean, if you want to talk about things you're trying to do, like resolutions, that's fine too, but I really like that as well. What is your expectation of us, and how can we help, and how can we be better citizens, if you will?
You know, I come from a different breed. I'm a leftist. I mean, I believe in the power of people and the power of organizing at the grassroots level and getting things done, right? I believe that I myself am a representative who people elected because they thought I had good ideas, but because they knew that I would truly represent them. But to represent somebody means that I can go to bat, and I will go to bat on issues. But what I need from my constituency is for them to come to bat with me, because I'm only one person, and on council, I guarantee you, all of those other council people look at me and they're like, "You are just one person who lives in this city." But there are a lot of issues that we all care about, that we all need to get done. And so the thing that I have done since the beginning, the first thing that I do, if somebody comes to me and says, I have an idea for what I want to get passed on council, I have an idea, I say, great, let's go talk to the city attorney's office, see if this is possible, and then we'll talk about it, right? That's the first thing. I need ideas. I come with a ton of them. I have a ton of ideas on what I'm going to do. I have advisors who give me ideas on what to do. I've got friends who are always on my back about X, Y, and Z things in the city that need to change, you know. But hearing from my constituency and hearing from the people what they need, what's on their mind, what's important to them is so important. And then there's a second step to that. When somebody comes to me and says, I want this changed, the second step is, again, coming from this philosophy that we are the people have the power. The people are always in power. And for that, that means that we have to build coalitions of people, right? Jerry, if you come to me tomorrow and you say, I want to make sure that I want to rezone the fledge so that I can put a giant pool in the backyard, I'd say, okay, you know what? I mean, that sounds like a fun issue, right? Yeah, whatever. I want to pull the background. So, you know, what I would tell you if you came to me and said that, I would say, you get all of your neighbors, you get all of your friends, you get everybody else, and I will tell you when to show up to city council so that you can pressure these people to get these things done. And it's worked. It's worked so well this year. Where, I mean, one thing that I passed this year, which, you know, super exciting issue, parking on the streets.
Yeah.
There was, you know, people came to council and they said, you know, we're living in housing where we don't have sufficient parking spaces in our houses to be able to park because we have 3 to 4 people living in our homes. And I heard this and I said, okay, problem. We can fix that problem. Then I went to the people who are complaining about it and I said, you guys go leave flyers on everybody's car. I had a friend who literally went to everybody's car and left a flyer and said, hey, somebody's trying to pass something to make sure that you can park on the street without a permit. And I had literally 20 people every council meeting that this thing was talked about, show up and express their support. And in the end, we won. We passed it because we told council that their constituencies wanted to get this done. Yeah. And there are, you know, my job as a city council person is to figure out how to get that work done and figure out how to turn those wheels, right? Because I'm the guy who knows Peter Spatafor, knows what he likes, what he doesn't like, what I can negotiate with him. I know Pat Spitzley. I know how we negotiate. I know, you know, the relationships that we have. I know how she votes. I know, you know, who she is. And for me, it's people management. My job is to say, all right, here's the people who are going to vote on this thing, and here's the people we need to swing. Here's the things that motivate them. And I have that information, and I'm willing to just give that information to anybody who wants it, who wants to push something forward. Obviously, I'm not going to push anything that I don't believe in, but You know, if it's something that I'm not passionate about and you are passionate about, we can figure out how to get it done together.
Yeah. So man, parking, that would take us another 2 hours, but
Oh, tell me about it.
that whole system just seems like we're spending $1 to protect a nickel. And it cost us in business downtown. It cost our people who are already living below the Alice threshold. A parking ticket gone wrong can make you lose your house. I mean, not to a mortgage, but to not be able to pay rent and not be able to fix the things that are critical or to make food insecure. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then we just put friction all over downtown as far as I got to pay for this parking. I don't even want to go down there now. So the poor restaurants and little pubs and whatever. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back from my rant. So yeah, let's, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to keep talking and get this aired. But for today, I think your mission is kind of shaping up in our minds. Would you articulate maybe a summary of what your mission is, what you're trying to really move forward?
You know, I've always believed that my role in life is to serve other people. I'm privileged. I'm white. I'm a male. I have a decent education, grew up in a middle-class household, lived a pretty, I mean, it was rocky sometimes, but a pretty good life. And one thing that my dad always instilled in me is that society only operates when each of us is willing to put ourselves into it, willing to do the work to change society for the better. And I come from a political philosophy that says that it's about the people, it's about us, it's about making sure it's human focused. And so my mission, my mission on city council is to represent my constituency and to do the things that'll move this city forward in the future, that in a way that's equitable. And when I talk about equity, I'm talking about racial equity. I'm talking about income equity. I'm talking about equitable distribution of resources. I'm talking about equitable snow plowing. But believe it or not, that's one of those issues. Equitable use of city resources in all sorts of ways. And my day job, I do equity work for a living too. Racial equity is one of those. I believe that society is never going to be great until we have complete and total racial equity and we have completely dismantled white supremacy. Because white supremacy is holding all of us back, every single one of us, even if you're a product of that. I mean, I am a product of white supremacy. My education, my background, all of that. I am a product of white supremacy. And I want to tear those systems down so that we can move forward equitably and as society united in in society united. And we're never going to be that way with white supremacy, right? So when I think about the things that I do on council, everything that I'm looking at is this dismantling white supremacy? Everything that I do on my work, tax policy, we can get into tax policy and racial equity all day long. That is literally what I do for a living all day. I sit down, I look at tax bills and I say, is this going to hurt people of color? Or is this going to increase racial equity? Is it going to decrease racial equity? Is this bill or this policy, based on white supremacy. Like, what are the reasons behind this? And the fact is that, Jerry, we all operate in a white supremacist system. We all do the things that we do. You may not, I'm sure that we could go to the Fledge, sit down and have a conversation and be like, oh yeah, there's this one thing that we do that maybe we shouldn't do because it's white supremacist. And that's something that I love to do, and something that I find really, really important in my life, because I want society to be better. And I think that that is how we grow as a people, as humanity, to get beyond these systems that are just tearing us down. And one of those systems, and one of my favorite systems that does this, is capitalism. Right? Because I'm an economist, and that's the thing that I'm focused on. But there's health, there's there's education, there's all of these different things. I'm just focused specifically on economics because that's my thing. So
I really try to emphasize that to people lately. Before 1910, economics was just called society, and it's just how we kind of operated. Then it started kind of being a discipline that you could do, and these economists started being economists and figuring out how to measure the unmeasurable. And yeah, I'd love to expound on that, but I'll kind of stop there for a second. So what you just said, do you think that is the answer to my question that I always ask is, what's something you do every damn day to push your mission forward? Is it the taxes, the representing, what you just said before?
When I wake up in the morning, I sit down. No, you know what? Every damn day, I get up and I take a shower. And in that shower, I think about the day ahead. And I think about the things that I can do to push my life and society forward simultaneously. Right? It's not always a conscious thought. It's something that, it's always floating around in my head. What am I doing today? What things can we do to kind of do this? And the other thing that is really important to me is communication. One thing that I always do every single day is I reach out to my advisors, I reach out to my friends, and I talk. I talk about things. I open up the news and I send articles and I say, what do you think about this? What's your perspective? Because I think that the only way to build a consensus and to build a direction and to figure out what direction we want to head to in society, the only way to do that is to have those conversations with people. Right? Just like you and I are doing right now. We're sitting down having a conversation. You and I have had so many conversations about the things that you want to see. And I love absorbing all of that information because, I just believe in this magical thing where we all absorb a whole bunch of information and then build a product. And that product is something that's just so beautiful because it came from nothing, I don't know if that was succinct enough for you. I'm sorry, but
it's perfect. The whole thing's perfect. So we daisy chain the shows together, and as I was saying a little bit earlier, I had a young lady named Sunny on the show. She's a junior at DeWitt High School, artist, activist, and she has a question for me to ask you. And her question is, as you reflect back on 2020, a lot of people will say, I wish that this would have changed, or I wish somebody would have done this. I wish Trump would have done that, and not a lot of people might be reflecting on themselves, or at least talking about that. What do you wish that you would have changed in 2020?
2020 had a lot of ups and downs. There was a lot of fight. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of, just so many things that happened. And I'm a confrontational person. And when I see inequity in the world, I stand up and I call it out, and I call it out for what it is, and I fight it. And that can mean that I can cause heartache in people. Let's just put it that way. You know, there's a lot of opposition to some of the things that I do. There's a lot of people who just don't believe the things that I do. And last year I did a lot of reacting. I did a lot of, for example, with the defunding thing. I introduced Black Lives Matter, and I put together a resolution. We introduced it, and we just rolled with it. And what I did during the entire process was react to what people were saying. And I feel like what I was missing, because I felt like I was pushing these things forward, and I felt like my life, my career is on the line for this stuff, right? Like, defunding the police is not a popular issue. And I decided, again, because I have this racial equity mindset and think that's the most important thing in the world, that I need to get this done. And one thing that I didn't stop to do was to be empathetic. I realize that there's an opposition. I realize what that opposition is saying, and I realize where that opposition is coming from, but I never sat down and had personal conversations with people about the way that they were feeling about these things. I always glossed over it. I'd go to a city council meeting. We would have the ordinance, we'd have the resolution up, and I would say, it's white supremacist. It's a white supremacist system. We should be getting rid of it. Anybody who doesn't support this thing is supporting white supremacism. Just always going through and always just pointing out the fact that we've got to do this now. But the problem is that society doesn't change until you change minds. And the way to change minds is to be empathetic with other people. And so one thing that I'm trying to do this year is to truly get to know the people and the change makers in Lansing at a more personal level, in a way that then I can understand where they're coming from strategically for me, so that I can convince them otherwise, right? But at the same time, so that they know that I'm not trying to disrupt their way of life because I don't like their way of life. I'm disrupting their way of life because there's a better way to do things out there. And that's always that fight with conservatives and progressives, right? It's like conservatives say, I'm scared of the future. I'm scared about these things that would change. I'd rather things stay the same. But we know that society is always changing, and we've got to be pushing forward. And government's really slow at that. So for me, it's building these relationships. One thing that I did on Monday was we reelected Peter Spatafor as president of council and Adam Hussein as vice president of council. And I will tell you what, Adam Hussein and I'm not going to say that we're not friends because that's mean, but we are just, I beat her mom, right? I beat his mom on council, and he and her have very similar views on things. We disagree on a lot, but to me, Adam wants the same things that I do. He wants a strong South Side. He wants wealth in his neighborhoods. He wants his streets cleaned. He wants to make sure that his youth are taken care of. He wants to make sure that economic development happens in his ward and not just in my ward, right? We've got a little bit of competition there. And I want to be able to work better with people who don't always agree with the things that I have to say. And I'm never going to compromise my values, and I'm never going to compromise who I am. But it's those discussions that build us out to be better people. And I want to be a better person in that way.
Yeah. One of our really key volunteers always is saying we're all still learning. So I'm going to start there. You know, you can't really learn when you're the only one talking. You can't really learn if everyone's telling you the same exact story and the same exact thing. And we also can't take advantage of the strength that is in our differences if we don't understand what our differences are. So I think that's a very insightful answer to Sonny's question.
You know, I want to add one more thing. You know, it's like all of us, I would say almost everybody in this city wants something similar.
Yeah.
It's like this. I always imagine it. I always talk about this with leftists. Like you've got socialists, communists, anarcho-communists. You know, you've got all these different groups of people, but there's like this target 100 years from now that we're all kind of pointing to and all aiming for in the same direction. But the methods to get there are different. And so for me, it's about arguing the methods and kind of figuring out those methods and also identifying what those goals are. You know, when I talked to I was talking to a Trump supporter the other day who is like, you know, just screaming about, you know, all sorts of stuff, talking to me about how leftists want to take their guns, how, you know, there's all of these, you know, crazy, the government, we can't trust the government worth anything, we can't trust our politicians. And, you know, I brought up that, you know, it's because we have corporate overlords who run our government. And this girl is like, yeah, you're right. We need to get rid of corporate representation at the federal level. And I was like, yes, that's dismantling capitalism. You, a right-wing person, just told me that you wanted to dismantle the capitalist political system that we have. So cool, right? We found something, we found the target, and now the two of us are going to start working towards that target together. And that's how I always look at this. Look at everybody's different ideas. Like we're all trying to figure this out, but we all have a similar goal. We want prosperity. That's what we want, you know?
Yeah. So I think a great answer to Sonny's question. Tomorrow on the show, I've got a young man that is a recent MSU grad last year. His name is Peter Rowe, and he started a simulation company. And by simulation, he was trying to simulate how metal and plastic would go through a mold and help the production process. The company, he shut it down. He didn't move forward with it. So we're going to tell the story of a failed project, but a successful entrepreneur, because you either succeed or learn as an entrepreneur. You never fail. So what question would you like to ask him?
You know, I'm interested. One thing that I love about entrepreneurship is exactly what you said. It's not a failure. It's a learning experience. And, you know, I myself am just fascinated by the entrepreneurial system. You know, I'm not an entrepreneur myself. We can talk about innovation all day, and I mean I innovate in my own ways, right, in government. But I'm not the type of person who's going to create this thing and develop it. And the thing that I'm really interested in is, what is that drive? What is that thing inside of an entrepreneur that makes them say, all right, time to fight, time to do the next thing, time to push forward, and time to find this new thing? Because it does take that drive and that energy and that passion to be able to just figure out that next thing. And I'm just interested in what that is for this person, what that is that's making them carry on and take this failure and just say, all right, time for the next thing. Because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Entrepreneurship is beautiful. And I just want to know more about that.
Okay. And I'm going to flip that on you a little bit. What keeps you going as, you know, you introduce defund the police and it doesn't pass, or defund LEAP or something like that, and it doesn't go, you know, what keeps you driving through that? The same,
you know, for me, it's a little bit of a different perspective, because again, I'm not an entrepreneur, and it's a different beast losing a vote, losing a losing something like that, you know? For me, it's a failure is never a failure, right? I introduced the defunding resolution, and though it ended up going nowhere and it'll never go where, I learned that every single news station in Lansing is not against defunding the police. In fact, every single one of them, every single one was either neutral or positive about reinvestment in the community. They talked about it in a good way. And you know what that means? That means that all of that readership is reading this positive view on this idea. And everybody is now talking about racial equity, which was something that wasn't happening before. And for me, I'm one of 8 people on council. I tell everybody this. I'm one of 8 people on council. You think that I'm going to be able to achieve the socialist dream that I want to when there's a whole bunch of people who are either, you know, liberals or conservative or whatever they call themselves? No, I'm not going to be able to do this. But you know what I can do? I can create a conversation that I hope will last for a long time. And that's what my goal is. And every time that I fail, I look at how that turned out to be a win, generally speaking. You know, the other thing that you talked about, you know, with LEAP, I introduced a budget priority that passed actually to reduce funding to LEAP. And I didn't do that necessarily because I thought that LEAP was the most terrible thing on the planet Earth. They do their job. Do I like how many brownfields they're giving out? Do I like that, they keep coming to council with all these crazy ideas that are going to cost us a whole bunch of money? I think that LEAP very particularly doesn't have the same incentive that my constituents do, right? LEAP's job is economic development. My constituents want to live in a vibrant city, and those are 2 disparate things. But I don't mind if LEAP doesn't get defunded. I just want them to know that we're watching them.
Yeah.
Right? I want them to know that the city of Lansing is paying very close attention to what they're doing, and that they are ultimately responsible to the people. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about the people being in charge of their government. This is about democracy. And this is how democracy works. And sometimes we get into these organizational bubbles. We get into these spaces where we say, this is how it's always run. We're the bosses here. And we're the ones who do this. The exact same thing with the police. The police sit down and they say, we've always been here. This is our job. We're always going to enforce. And then they go around telling everybody that without us, there's going to be so much crime and violence. Mm-hmm. But that's not true. That's not how society works. We can't always be in the old way of thinking. We have to grow. We have to develop, especially in the face of inequity. Yeah. And so for me, it's getting up, learning from that experience, and finding that next thing to fight for. And that's how I always do it. I fail, and then it's like, all right, I learned the things, I know things, I've started the conversation, people are talking about this, and now we go to the next thing. And that next thing might be related, it might not, but we've built a conversation, we've built relationships, we've built friendships, we've built community. And that's one of those things that's important to me too. Building community around these issues so that we're all fighting in it together. And so I hope that answers that question.
I think it was a great answer. And I think it's very entrepreneurial, actually. I mean, it is, we fall in love with our problems. It's our failure when we fall in love with our solution. When you fall in love with your problem, then you keep pushing that needle forward because you want to see that change happen. So I could say, this is the solution and nobody wants to buy it because it doesn't really solve the problem. And if I stay in love with that solution, I'm going to fail miserably. But if I come back and reflect, okay, here's a different solution to the problem I'm in love with, then that really can get you excited. And I also want to make one comment. I love how you're pulling that win. There's always a win in there somewhere, and you pull that win out, because I would also add that, you know, if we dismantle something, that means it was mantled in the first place, right? And it was mantled from, you know, some small police force that all of a sudden the Pentagon is giving away free tanks to everybody that wants one. And now they got this military and they've got this tear gas, and they build on this. At least next year, when we go to build another block onto this bigger and bigger police state, then I'm not saying we're in a police state, but you know what I mean? At least we're going to question it and say, does it really belong in the police force? Should this be, you know, should we be investing in the village instead? Should we, you know?
I mean, this happened this year. There was a grant that came through where cops were going to be getting like $200,000 to do seatbelt traffic tickets. And I knew that, you know, I was trying to defund the police on the first hand. So I was like, well, this grant isn't good. I mean, obviously, because cops are going to pull over black people because they're not wearing their seatbelts. That's what's going to happen. And somebody's going to get shot because that's what happens to police, right? And I shouldn't talk about police like this, but, you know, I have my perceptions, and, you know, I'm elected now. I might not get this job again. But anyway, you know, it's like this grant came up, and because we were having this conversation about defunding, I said on council, is this something that our police should have a role in? And you know what? People said no.
Yeah.
The grant failed. We won. It was a small win, but we showed the police that we're not going to give them everything they ask for anymore. We're not going to allow them to militarize. We're not going to give them more money when it's not for the essential things that they're doing, which, again, essential. Investigating murders is essential, I guess. Investigating rapes is essential. Investigating domestic violence, I don't even know if that's essential, because we've got like the CARES network and stuff like that that's taking care of things like that. You know, it's like we can build systems outside of the police to do these things, and now we're having that conversation, and that's really powerful.
Yeah. I really appreciate you, Brandon. I think this has been fascinating for me. You know, probably just two mathematicians talking to each other, and nobody's watching or something. But no, people are talking a lot on the right-hand side. I always end the show by asking the guest, is there something you'd like to take us out with? Some message, some anything?
You know, 2020 was a hard year for everybody. And I think that what I want to see coming into 2021 is a renewed, after the vaccine, obviously, I want to see us take this isolation that we've had and just blow it to smithereens, right? I want us all to just party, have a great time, get to know each other, meet each other, have parties, have fundraisers, have whatever it is. And I want us all to collaborate, because, you know, it's about all of us collaborating together that is going to get these things done.
So Dustin out in the comments called it the power of community. We got to get back together. The Fledge is having a fucking party. That's for damn sure when this is all over and ready to get back together. So
I will be there.
Did we go that whole hour without anybody swearing, and I wrecked it right at the end?
No, I said damn a couple times, and then I said shit. So
I think we did all right.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
This was a lot of fun, and thank you for coming on, and I appreciate it very much.
Anytime. I love you, Jerry. You are a fantastic person. So
too,
I can't wait to work with you more and more and more in the future.
All right. So everyone out there, I will see you later. And thanks again, Brandon.
Yeah. See ya.